If you've heard of SEO but you're not sure how to get started with it and use it in your health or life coaching business, then today's episode of the show is going to be perfect for you. I'm interviewing the lovely Meg Casebolt from Love at First Search, and we're talking all things SEO, AI, and much, much more. Let's dive in. Well, welcome, Meg, to the
Thank
Wholehearted
you.
Business Show. We have just had a quick preamble about romance books, which I'm sure we'll get back into at some point, but
We could just take our little preview and put it in as a
we
YouTube
could do.
short, and that way
We
people
could
can listen to
do.
it that way.
Absolutely.
I'm all about content repurposing.
Yes. So yes, we'll absolutely get back onto that topic, I think, at some point. But for other than romance novels, would you like to tell everyone a bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Sure. So my name is Meg Casebolt. My pronouns are she, her, and I am an SEO strategist. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, which is helping businesses show up in search engines like Google or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or ChatGPT's search functionality. All of those, Amazon, they're all different search engines. And so we're trying to figure out what are the things that people are potentially searching for so that way you can be the one that shows up in those search results. Sort of went into the business pitch before the personal pitch. I live in upstate New York. I have two little kids. They are currently 7 and 10. I'm married. I have a 80-pound pit bull, and I run the business in between 20 and 25 hours a week. So that way I can spend more time with my family. I know that's super important to you and your people. So I wanted to put that in there as every day I get my kids on the bus at 8 in the morning. Every day I get my kids off the bus at 3:30 in the afternoon, because I don't think that our businesses should take up our whole lives.
Yeah. And we sound very similar. I've got two children, and exactly the same for me. So I've got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. And it's very, very similar. To school at 8 o'clock, pick them up at three, to school at half eight, pick them up at 3 o'clock. It's
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's why we're
it's
talking at the time that we are. I'm like, this is a
exactly.
little early for me. It's a little late for you. And that's what we have to do
Yeah.
sometimes is have these
Yeah.
flexibilities, but also have these boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And obviously, part of, having that freedom is having a business that runs effectively, does what it needs to
Mhm.
do. And I've certainly become more and more interested in SEO over time. So just to really quickly digress, but I started off as a blogger. So that was kind of this is like 2010, like the
Hmm. The
blogger
golden age of
the golden age of
blogging.
blogging. So that's when I started off as a health coach way back then. So my blog's always been a big part of what it is that I've done. But for people who are not familiar with SEO, I know you just explained that it's search engine optimization. Would you like to explain a little bit more about kind of how it works and how it's relevant to people who might be starting coaching businesses?
Sure. So search engine optimization is about making sure that your website or any of your marketing materials, but really let's talk about your website here because that's the first place that most people start unless they're in e-commerce. It's making sure that your website is set up so that Google's crawler bots that has these like scanner tools basically that will go through your website and look at everything. It'll look at the HTML and CSS and all that of your website, all the code, and say, what is the most relevant information? And what are the words that other people might be looking for? And is it presented in such a way that if people were searching for this information, this would be the best resource for them? So, our job when we're doing search engine optimization, optimizing our websites for the search engines, that's all that we're saying with SEO, is making sure that we are stating clearly what it is that we do, who we do it for, how we can solve their problems, and we're structuring it in a way that makes it easy for those robots to be able to read it so that if somebody goes to Google and searches for wholeheartedly Laura, what shows up is first result, wholeheartedlylaura.com. Second result, probably your podcast. Third result, probably your YouTube channel. Like they know everything that you're doing across the multimedia that you're publishing on. But if you don't have all those channels, we still want you to show up for those results. We still want you to show up for those words that people are searching for, whether that is people who already know your brand, which is a sign that your other marketing is working, which is a good thing, or people who are looking for business coach for I'm not going to go with heart centers because people don't usually identify themselves as sort of a bigger picture umbrella like that, but we could go with business coach for highly sensitive people
Yeah.
because that's a phrase that one person might use to describe him or her or themselves. So if they say business coach for highly sensitive person and you maybe have a page on your website that's like this is how I do business coaching for highly sensitive people, for HSPs. And maybe you just say HSPs because HSPs know that they're
Yeah.
HSPs. So they would say that instead of spelling it all out. Knowing that sort of anticipatory search of what are the potential things that my ideal client is looking for. And then you can proactively create whatever that content is so that when they're ready, you are the one that shows up in those search results.
Yeah.
Now, I actually have multiple clients who are business coaches for HSPs, and that's a good thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because there might be different ways that people are searching for that information. They might want someone in the UK, so that way they don't have to do the phone call flexibility.
Yeah.
They might want somebody who has experience working with social justice organizations, right? Like we don't always know what those we actually can find out what those terms are that people are looking for,
Yeah.
but we can't always anticipate what that is. So competition isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It means that the more you are yourself, the more likely you are to be found for what you do.
Yeah.
Now, if they don't know all of those things about themselves, then they might start with, business coach to help health coaches grow their business.
Yeah.
Then we're getting a little bit farther away from this is what Laura does best, but it's still you. So that's part of what our search engine optimization strategy is what
Yeah.
are the potential things that people are looking for that you are the best fit for, not necessarily health coaching, because you don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, fab, perfect explanation for people to understand it. And in terms of getting started with, obviously you mentioned there the website is probably the first place to begin. How would people start? Is it just about writing the copy and kind of just thinking about the words that they're using? What would be the first steps if someone was like, right, I definitely need to have my stuff found on Google somehow? What steps might they start to take?
The first thing that I usually tell people to do is to take a look at your homepage, your about page, and your services page. Those core pages of who you are working with, how you serve them. These should not be pages that are like, hi, I'm Meg and I live in upstate New York with my dog and kids, because nobody cares about me yet until they believe that I can do what they need me to do. So this should start with language that is about the outcomes that my clients want to achieve or the problems that they're trying to solve. Now, this isn't, you don't have to slam every single problem that you can potentially solve for people on your homepage. That's too much. But I can start by saying, you're tired of posting on social media, aren't you? Good news. I can help you create evergreen content that will help you show up in search engines so that way you don't have to post on social media so much. And when I can say that, here's the problem that I'm trying to solve. Maybe I even say, hey, entrepreneurs, are you tired of creating business content, right? All
Mhm.
of these little phrases that we include in our copywriting language and our content can help direct Google to drive the right people to our website so that people who are clearly business owners and say, I'm so tired of posting for my business on social media. What should I do instead? Oh, have you thought about search engine optimization? Right? Like, and maybe they'll find me because I've written a book about getting off of social media.
Yeah.
But we have to think through. That's really the first step before we even review our copy is
Yeah.
we think through what is the moment that that ideal client is going, I am so frustrated with whatever's going wrong. I'm going to go to Google right now and try to find a solution.
So getting familiar with the kind of questions that people might have and the thoughts that they're having before you kind
Mhm.
of get to that point. I mean,
Yeah, and I know you work with a lot of health coaches,
yeah,
so it's not always necessarily just like, I'm a health coach. Do you need health coaching? Because I can health coach you.
yeah,
It can be more like, do you have colitis
yeah,
and you need help figuring out how to manage your diet without eating anything that has seeds in it?
yeah,
You
yeah,
can get, and here's the thing about search, you can get hyper specific without niching down your entire business. Laura, you know this as a
yeah,
blogger. It's like every
yeah,
page of your website can be found for different things. And then once they get to you, then you can start to roll out the red carpet and say, look what I can do and look how I can help you. But
yeah.
you don't have to do everything. You have to do several small things well.
So getting started with the kind of main pages on your website,
Mhm.
your home about and your services page and being led by that. And I know you said there as well, I think it's really interesting about it sounds like you don't have to, because I think some people have got the impression with SEO that it's all quite, and I think a lot of us might be familiar. I mean, certainly from back in my old blogging days when people used to, the content farms, and they
Oh
used to
my
buy
God.
posts from you and things like that,
Ooh.
are quite familiar with you've got to have these phrases in multiple times and there's these different kinds of
Mhm.
links and things like that. I mean, is that still the case, or can you still write quite intuitively, or just and layer that in, or kind of what's your thoughts and approach around that? Because I think again, sometimes SEO has got this angle of being a bit robotic, which is a whole
Oh
other thing
my
when we get
God.
onto AI, but
I was just going to bring up AI, honestly. I think, you know, 10, 15 years ago when you were starting, it really did have to be a volume game.
yeah.
And part of that is that we think about SEO can be, I'm sorry, blogging can be used in two ways.
Mhm.
One is you can blog for traffic, which means you have to create, can I swear?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You have to create like a shit ton of content
Yeah.
if you're trying to be found for traffic. You have to be found hundreds of thousands of times a month in order to and get tons and tons of new eyeballs on your
Yeah.
website in order to make money from it. Or you can blog for conversion.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean you can bring a smaller amount of people to your website and then you can sell them into a product or service. So instead of selling the traffic where you're selling advertising on your website, which is sort of a I wouldn't say a dying model, but it's a much harder model to
Yeah.
build into from scratch.
Yeah.
Most people that I work with are service businesses or maybe digital course businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once they get the right people to their website, then it's the website's job to say, don't you want to work with me? Don't you want to buy this course? Don't you want to buy this product?
Yeah.
And that's how they make money.
Yeah.
And if that's your business model, then you don't need to have hundreds of thousands of people finding your website every month. You
Yeah.
need, I don't know, 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can get more specific. You can choose terms that I'm going to get a little nerdy. They're lower volume and lower competition. You don't have to be
Yeah.
found for colitis in
Yeah.
order to be found for seed-free food to eat for colitis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can choose these more specific, they're called long tail keywords, if
Yeah.
you've heard that phrase, where it's like you can choose to get more targeted, whether that's the audience that you're working with, the products that you're selling, the types of services that you're providing, the software that you're using, if we're talking to any coaches, like there's so
Yeah.
many different ways you can specialize, but you don't have to be found for the top level word. You can get so specific that you don't need to have tons and tons and tons and tons of content. I have clients who have 10 really great blog posts on their site.
And I think that's a really good reminder, because so often we get caught up, and I think there's been this thing as well, partly from social media, in that it's massive numbers, it's
Hmm.
massive numbers of followers, it's massive email list numbers, it's massive traffic. But actually, again, this is just another really good example of actually you're not, you're not an influencer,
Yes.
you know, you're not a YouTuber.
Yeah.
People talk about YouTube. You're not really a blogger.
You're
And
not really a blogger as a business model.
And a lot of the chatter around some of these topics is just not relevant if you're a coach and you're selling a service, because you don't need the high level of numbers that they would need to make their business model, their particular version of what it is that they do and work.
And I just realized I never answered your question, which was, do we still have to structure posts to get the keywords stuffed into all these places
Yeah.
and say the phrase, seed-free diet for colitis 27 times in a blog
Yeah,
post?
yeah,
No, we don't. Back 10, 15 years ago, we did.
yeah,
That was the indicator to Google that this is what this post is about. And that was the way to get to the top of the search rankings. But Google has recognized that there's some low quality content that followed all their rules, and that's not necessarily the things that people want to read. And with the rise of ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and all these
yeah,
generative AI services, that is what is being produced by the AI is they have scraped the internet, they've seen that content, they replicate that style of content, and therefore, if you write content in that old school over optimized way, then Google's going to look at that and go, oh, I've seen that before. That's not interesting. That's not new. That's not relevant. What we want to do now is both be that hyper targeted piece that strategy that we've already discussed, and Google cares about your experience and your expertise. Google doesn't want to hear, here's the diet that you should eat to reduce inflammation. Google wants to hear, I worked with Karen. And Karen had these problems and Karen had these symptoms, and we were able to go through an elimination diet that helped Karen to do this. And at the same time, Karen started walking 14 million steps a day. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But the experience
Yeah.
and the expertise of saying, here's my credentials, here's my case study,
Yeah.
and then I'll give you this information in a structured way that's still helpful.
That's really interesting because that's something I've had the feeling for a little while is that
Mhm.
it's not like your how-to blog posts as much as what it used to be. It's not kind of like
Sometimes you still
here's
need them.
Sonia, okay.
I
That's a
just
good
had a
point.
call yesterday where I
Yeah.
had to say to a client, I'm sorry, I have to tell you to write two very boring blog posts. I have to tell you, like, these are the two that are just like, they're going to bring in people a little bit
Yeah.
earlier in your customer development cycle. And
Yeah.
then once they get there, then we can send them to this and this and this with
Yeah.
our, which are more specific. Sometimes we
Yeah.
got to do a little bit of
A
that
little bit of
old
that.
school work.
Yeah.
But the four things that Google has stated that they care about are
Yeah.
their acronym, because Google has 4 million acronyms,
Yes.
is EEAT, which is experience, expertise, authority, and trust.
Brilliant.
AI can't replicate your experience. And trust is something that takes a long time to develop, but some of it is that structural stuff on your website of, oh, is it secure? Do you have a contact form people can actually contact you on? Because
Yeah.
websites that are generated by AI don't.
Yeah.
What are some of those
Yeah.
things that you can do to help people know, like, and trust you that will also help with your SEO?
And in terms of AI, then, I feel like some people are like, oh, I've got ChatGPT. I don't have to write blog posts anymore. I can just put stuff into ChatGPT, and use that in the same way. But I mean, what's your kind of opinion on that? Or and I know that people tend to have like an ethical opinion and then also maybe like a professional opinion. But give me both. Give me all the AI thoughts when it comes to your area of expertise.
Realistically, I know that people are going to use it.
Yeah.
And especially those of us who are solopreneurs, it's nice to have that jump start,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll say to ChatGPT, like, if I were trying to rank for these keywords, what would you say? And
Yeah.
then I look at it and I go, how can I explain this differently?
Yeah.
And I can still use some of their information and rewrite it so it sounds like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll
Yeah.
say to ChatGPT, if you were going to rank for this topic, give me an outline of
Yeah.
some of the topics that you think I should talk about based on this. Based on the things that are already ranking, what are some of the topics that Google would expect me to discuss? And then I can go through that checklist and be like, well, I want to talk about this, but not this.
Yeah.
But you can
Yeah.
get a big holistic picture from those large language models that have already done the analysis to say, where do I fit into this competitive landscape?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting a little nerdy.
No, I think it's really interesting because again, it's like, I mean, are AI generated blog posts being penalized by Google then, or are they still kind of showing up? Is there still like, is there or is it about using ChatGPT in that kind of more assistive way where it's giving you ideas, it's kind of helping you formulate stuff, and then you're doing your version of whatever it's giving you?
Okay, let me backtrack
Hmm.
and answer like kind of a bigger
Yeah,
picture
yeah,
question, which is, why does Google choose the blog posts that it does?
yeah,
It chooses based on the quality of the content,
yeah,
which is a lot of what we're talking about here.
yeah, yeah,
It chooses based on search intent.
yeah,
Does this blog post answer the question or solve the problem that the
mhm,
person who is searching, is actually wanting to achieve?
yeah,
Is that informational search intent? They're trying to learn something. Is it commercial search intent? Why? Why are they searching? Does this piece of
yeah,
content solve whatever they're searching for? It's looking for, is there authority on this page? Are other people talking about this same content? Are other people sharing this information?
yeah,
Has this web, and then trust,
yeah,
has this website been around for a while?
yeah,
Does this person have a point of view?
yeah,
And ChatGPT can tell you those answers, but
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily have the relevance to the search intent.
yeah,
And Google wants to give the answer that is the best fit for that question.
yeah,
That often sounds like what's not already out there. Google wants to give them something that's a little bit more interesting.
yeah,
And generative AI, by design, is intended to sound like everyone else.
yeah, yeah,
It's a process called language homogeny. It has scraped the internet. It figures out
Mm.
how people sound on the internet. It takes the exact center middle root of everything without an opinion, without any controversy, without any sort of, hot takes,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that would not be the moderate approach
Yeah,
to
of course.
things. So if you just take something that's written on ChatGPT and put it on your blog, can you rank for it? Sure, but it's pretty bland.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's intentionally bland. It is
Yes.
built to be bland. Could you train your GPT to include more of your perspective? Sure. Or you could just update the content to make it sound more like you.
Yeah.
You could say to GPT, oh, use a playful tone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Include more pop culture references. Like, can you do that? Yes. But does it sound like you? Still no.
Yeah.
Unless you're like, GPT, write this like a drunk college girl, which it can do, and it's pretty
Yes.
funny.
Yeah. I can imagine.
But
Yeah.
the more time we spend with AI, the more we recognize
Hmm.
the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
People can read it, and then it comes back to trust.
Yes.
If you are writing a blog post that says, "Here's my experience," and I can tell that it's not actually your experience,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to stay very long on your website. I'm going to bounce back off of your website, and Google's going to notice that I didn't spend much time on your website. And over time, the fact that people are then it's actually called pogoing, where they
Oh,
go
okay. Yeah.
they go to like let's say search result 1 and then they go to
Yeah.
search result 2 and search result 3 because 1 and 2 didn't do it. Then Google looks at that and they're like, "Oh, search result 1 didn't answer their question and we're going to bring it
Yeah.
down."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Yeah. Oh, well, there we go. Listeners, watchers, viewers, some good tips on using AI because I think it is one of those things. Obviously, it's not going away anytime soon, is it?
no.
But it's quite interesting, and yeah, I've had the feeling that sharing more of a ex things from my experience point of view is helpful rather than just being quite dry with the
And
tool.
you can still teach.
Yeah.
And you can still
Yeah.
answer the question and you can still give those outcomes that people want to achieve, but you can do it in a way that's connective and not just, what does the Mayo Clinic have to say about this? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be
Yeah.
cold in order for
Yeah.
it to be connecting.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of health and life coaches as well, it's kind of like, their lived experience is still really important. And I think sometimes people get caught up about all of the other information online and how it has to be, reference to different research things and all this kind of stuff. But I think when you're talking from your own lived experience, it brings a different perspective in, doesn't it?
And you still can
Yeah,
include those
yeah,
external links. That's a
yeah,
really great way to
yeah,
prove to Google and to your reader that you did your homework.
yeah, yeah,
It's really important to link to those things,
yes,
but it's also important to show that you're a human now more than
yeah.
ever.
And then when it comes to using SEO, and a lot of the people who are in kind of my world, we're getting a bit fed up with social media. We're getting a bit tired.
Getting?
Got long time ago, got very
We're
tired.
so burned out on social media. Oh my
Bored.
God.
And I'm looking at the opportunities that platforms that operate more based on SEO. I know social media just have an element of SEO, doesn't it? The you
It
kind of
does.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I know there's been a bit of a shift, or at least that isn't my world because that's what I've done. I think people have kind of followed along, but towards more platforms that are SEO based. But I mean, is there any other kind of benefits, do you think, for people potentially kind of moving from social media for the bulk of their marketing to more of these different kind of platforms that are search based?
I don't know if I have enough time in the rest of this
You can
episode
show
to
your
talk
booth.
about all the benefits. It's true. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, here's my book on the topic, which is based on a podcast that I ran for 100 episodes talking about this topic. So I
Yes.
might feel a little strongly about it. This is called Social Slowdown, by the
Yes. We
way.
will put a link in the description for
You can
everybody.
still go back and listen to all those podcasts, which I started that podcast in 2021 and I
Wow.
ran it for 2 years of
Yeah.
interviewing entrepreneurs to say, how are you engaging with social media and how are you disengaging from social media? And when you are making that choice to disengage, what is that doing to your mental health?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us are putting all of our, not just our time and our energy
Mhm.
into a tool that is built to be addictive, but also we're putting our self-esteem into it. And I talked to a lot of people who said, once I got a pipeline of people from other sources maybe not SEO. Maybe it was
Yeah.
referrals. Maybe it was podcasting. Maybe like there are
Yeah.
a lot of alternative. I have 13 alternatives that aren't just SEO in the
Yeah.
book because I think that that works for some people and not everyone. But once I took a step back and just diversified, it doesn't have to be leaving social. Once I diversified, I noticed that my brain felt clearer. And
Yeah.
that's such a nice feeling. And then also, whether or not you leave social media, if you can find some alternative marketing strategies and invest your time in those, especially if there's something that has a longer shelf life, whether that's SEO and evergreen content, or
Mhm.
it's a really strong referral network, or it's learning how to do outbound sales so that way you can go cherry pick your clients and pick which ones they are, then you don't have not only the time and energy of posting on social, but also you don't have your ego caught up in, oh God, nobody liked this post,
Yeah.
which I'm still in. I still get it, it's still there. And
Yes.
even though I've literally done 100 episodes, written a book,
Yeah.
promoted the book, I promoted the book about getting off social media on social media because
Yeah.
that's where the people who needed to hear it are. And it's
Yeah.
really difficult to detach ourselves from this connective tissue of our lives.
Yeah.
So that can be a choice on
Mhm.
in your business, whether that is let me, post less frequently,
Yeah.
let me try to find an alternative so that way instead of 80% of my clients coming from Instagram, maybe 20% of my clients from Instagram and 50% come from referrals and 30% come from content marketing, right? Like
Yeah.
what are some ways that, especially there are days where like Instagram goes down or
Yeah.
Facebook just decides to close down your account
Yes.
and
Yes.
there's nothing you can do about it, right? Like putting all of your eggs in any of these baskets
Yeah.
can be detrimental
Yeah.
to your long-term business growth, to your mental health, to
Yeah.
all of these things. So,
Yeah.
is there a benefit to getting off social or to decreasing your dependence on social? Absolutely. Is it an easy process? Not necessarily, especially if that's where your clients and your leads are coming from. But a
Yeah.
lot of people I've talked to have said, I don't know where my clients are coming from, so I post because I don't know what to do.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Exactly. I think a lot of people use it because they just think that that's what you do.
Hmm.
Start a business, you use Instagram and Facebook, like that's kind of what you do. But for a lot of people who literally hate doing it, and I think again, like the time, I know you mentioned there about evergreen content, and I think SEO is obviously really well set up for that. I know I've got blog posts from 2018, even prior to
Hmm.
that are still bringing in new email subscribers like every single day. Like, we talked at the beginning about having a business that doesn't like overrun your life,
Hmm.
and how you work 20 to 25 hours a week, which is exactly what I do as well. And I think part of having not having to feed I feels like social media is a machine that needs to be constantly fed.
Yeah. And I think that there are people who believe, oh, I have to prove to my clients that I am successful so that when they find me on social media, they want to work with me because this is a lifestyle brand. But the
Yes. Yeah.
fact is that probably the most successful coaches in your industry you've never heard of because
Yeah.
they're not influencers. They're not standing on a stage somewhere talking about how great they are. They're not
Yeah.
trying to sell their book or their marketing program or anything like that because a lot of these people move into influencer space and those are the ones that you see. But the ones who are making the most money and still have the private houses and have all those other pieces are not the ones who are on Oprah. They are the
Yeah.
ones who are just
Yeah.
picking up the phone and going, "Do you want to work together?" Or they're
Yeah.
getting it through referrals, or they're
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
not the people that you think.
Again, I know that this has come up earlier on in our conversation, but I think that the mistake between thinking that you have to be an influencer or like that level, I think there's quite a bit of like confusion perhaps. And I was going to ask a bit about what some mistakes you see kind of like in the SEO space, but I suppose something that I see, I suppose, and I'm guessing you too, is that people kind of confuse that they think that they need influencer level visibility, if you like, I suppose, to have a successful coaching business, and that's not the case at all. I certainly don't have that.
Yeah. I think
But,
maybe an exercise that would be helpful for people is figure out what, based on what your
mm,
price is,
yeah,
figure out how many clients you need.
yeah,
And then figure out how many sales calls you would need to get
yeah.
that number of
Conversion,
clients.
yeah,
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 exactly. And then figure out your
yeah,
conversion rate and go, oh, I actually only need to talk. Like, and if you have a long-term contract, then maybe you only need one new person a month. Why do you need to have your posts seen by 1,000 people to get one new person a month, especially
yeah.
when those people are maybe just looking at your recipe or maybe just looking at your cat?
Yes.
they're not the
Yeah,
right person. They're not
yeah,
ready to buy from you.
yeah. It's definitely a good reminder, I think, to kind of get out of
Hmm.
that brain space, 100%.
Hmm.
We've talked quite a lot about blogging, I think, is a one way you can use SEO, but there's many others, isn't there? I know YouTube is obviously a search-based platform. Like, do each of these platforms have a slightly different approach when the way that they SEO has worked on those platforms? Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll just like point out to people that
Yes.
YouTube is owned by Google. It is the second
Yes.
largest search engine on the planet. So
Yeah.
don't sleep on YouTube.
Let's look on YouTube. Yes, I've been saying
Um,
this for a while.
but also, I'm going to share my anecdotal
Mhm.
experience about
Mhm.
YouTube,
Yeah.
which is that people who are YouTubing are maybe looking to DIY more so than looking to hire.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. That's not a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I found that when I was creating content on YouTube, the content that did the best was the how-to content, unless
Mhm.
I wanted to become a vlogger.
Yes.
I did not want to
Yes.
do. I did not want,
Yeah.
hey guys, like and
Yeah.
subscribe. Like I just was not interested in that type of content.
Yes.
I wanted to promote
Yeah.
my business
Yeah.
and and so I had a pretty good conversion rate
Mhm.
for YouTube into a self-paced course.
Yes.
But very rarely do people find me on YouTube and then book a one-on-one discovery call.
Yeah.
People who listen to my podcast are the ones who book the calls
Yeah.
with me because they feel like they know me.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm having longer, deeper conversations and they're going on walks with their dog and they're
Yeah.
washing the dishes while
Yes.
they're listening to me and they're just getting my ridiculous stories in their ears over and
Yes.
And then by the time they get on a discovery call, they're like, oh, you're that person. I
Yeah.
already know you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
think about who your ideal client
Yeah.
is, what they need from you, how they want to engage with their content, how
Mhm.
they want to consume your content, how you want to create said content.
Yeah.
Because if you hate video, don't feel like you are forced to do
Oh,
video.
yeah,
Nobody is
absolutely.
telling you to
Yeah.
do video,
Yeah.
but find the content style that works best for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
For me, it's podcasting. I have two
Yeah.
podcasts because I love
Yeah.
podcasting,
Yeah.
but I loved video. It just didn't
Yes.
convert for me. So I couldn't bring myself to keep paying $300 for a fully edited video if it didn't make me back
Yeah.
$300 a month. It
Yeah.
didn't.
It's
Could I have grown
again.
it and monetized and had YouTube pay me and then have to do the monkey dance? I could have. Sure. And if that's what,
Yeah.
like, and here's the other piece is like figure out what the outcome is that you want each of those channel platforms to do for you.
Yeah.
People still find my YouTube channel and I haven't
Yeah.
posted in 3 years.
Yeah. And also like measuring your results, because everything what you've done there is you've noticed that, well, people aren't converting from YouTube.
Hmm.
So, and then you've got to make that decision, haven't you, about where you put your time. I think that's maybe another thing, and I know I've made this mistake in the past, is and social media is probably the best example, to be fair, of
Yeah.
how much time you're investing in something and then not actually seeing the results come back, which is, and then being honest about actually this is not working because I'm not getting any new clients from this. But you see, my experience with YouTube has been different, and I have had a few clients who've come to me through YouTube. So I think it just kind of reiterates about
Know your people.
know your people, look at
Know
your
their
results
behavior.
as much as you can as well, I suppose. Which brings us nicely on to the event that you're going to be participating in that I'm running, which is called Search and Connect, which is all about these search engine based platforms and how we can do more on those, how we can utilize them better in lots of different ways so that whoever's going to listen to this lovely event has got lots of different ideas about how they can do it, because there's no one way of doing it. As you've said, podcasting works really well for you. I know for some people, Pinterest and blogging. I mean, that was what I used to do a long time ago. And Pinterest is another search engine that's changed a lot as well. So I'm very much looking forward. So if you've enjoyed listening to Meg, I will put a link for Search and Connect for anyone who wants to come along and listen more, because we're going to talk a bit more about the client attraction stuff, aren't we, in that event, which I can't wait for. But as we wrap up, would you like to share where everyone can come and find you and where you are online?
Of course. Like I said, my name is Meg Casebolt. My business is Love at First Search. So you can find that at loveatfirstsearch.com. You're welcome to go find me on YouTube, but as you know, I haven't posted there for several years. But it still has a lot of great quality videos of evergreen content that hasn't changed. So if you are thinking about like, oh, I want to start SEO, that is a fantastic place to get those resources.
Yes.
I also have two podcasts. One of them is called Aggressively Human, and you can find it on any podcast platform. I co-host that with a friend of mine who is a Harvard MBA business coach. So she knows what's going on. And
Yeah.
she and I both have a healthy level of skepticism about how to run our businesses in a way that doesn't let the AI overlords
Yes.
take over. So we want to integrate technology into our businesses, but
Yeah.
also recognize that we shouldn't cater to the algorithms for all of our decision making and continue to be as human as possible in these businesses that we're running. And then I have a second podcast that is called First Dates and Soulmates that is all about romance novels.
Yes. We were just having
Because
a big chat about that, weren't we, before?
I just published my second romance novel because I just love writing romance novels, not because I'm like, oh, I need to take my knowledge of marketing and apply it to,
Yeah.
and I do, like I do apply
Yeah.
that knowledge of marketing because
Yeah.
once I wrote a business book, I was like, oh, I know how to do this. But I did
Yeah.
it because I love it, and I think it's okay to have things that you do that you love
Yeah.
that are just something that nourishes your creativity without
Yeah.
feeling like you need to figure out how to turn everything into a part of your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, like, part of us, I think a lot of us wanting to run businesses that don't, have us working like 60 hours a week and, that aren't revolving around being a 6 or 7 figure business owner, which is the thing that
Mm-hmm.
we actively don't like prescribe to in my community, is being able to write or read. In my case, I was just saying that
Yeah.
I've been reading a Court of Thorn and Roses series and just and absolutely hooked. So yeah,
Welcome.
yeah,
Welcome to the world of
I know I feel
romance.
like I'm well and truly hooked into this now. So yeah, so thank you so much, Meg. That's been awesome. Really looking forward to you being part of Search and Connect as well. I will put all of your links in the description for everyone to come and follow you and find you. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I look forward to Search and Connect. It's going to be a great event.